Check. Keep it alive through these lines I write. I keep it live cause I thrive. I might just blow your mind tonight. I'm so hyped, but it's no hype. From this height, it's direct hits on sight. I'm your type, lend me your ears to show you that there's something in me. I'm not giving up, I'm standing right here, holding these days hostage. And I'll make this my year. We turning fear into love, and the love's in the air. I love doing this cause nothing compares. Nothing can share that same type of feeling when you feeling and flare. They can't catch it, it's havoc. I rip to a tear, switch a scenario on stereos, I leave them impaired. Variables start to change and they're all in my range. I just gotta grab it, it's all mathematics. Every step is drastic, I make it fantastic. I'm trying to take your breath away. Asthmatic.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo.
Yeah, just nod your head with it, so explicit and vivid. Every image is intricate, intimate. I put my all into it, no scrimmage and no rules. I'm a pro tool, hear my heartbeat, beat into the vocals. I'm so loco, lost my mind, oh no. It's Ponderoso, dope, so no overdose, cause it's dope, yo. Man, this is house grown, mixed with some milestones. So I let the style flow down like the Dow Jones, bringing it with some foul tones, letting the crowd know we getting loud, so it's eardrum rudiments. Yeah, we bring it rude again. Move, little hooligan. Music for tuning in. Full time to the 10. I'm on my clock like I told you.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anti-Media Radio. Once again with your host Nick Burnaby here on UCY.tv. Make sure you guys check us out here on UCY Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at the same time. You could bookmark the website you're on now and check back on other days, other times as well, because there's a bunch of other awesome hosts here on UCY. Make sure you check out our website, theantimedia.org, for all the latest and best anti-establishment news. A lot of police accountability news, a lot of political corruption. I mean, you want to know what the government's up to, check out our site. And I'm joined by my co-host, DB Schwartz, tonight. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. I'm just watching this. What in the heck is happening with the market is kind of insane. I mean, it's actually kind of a good thing right now if you've been listening to alternative news programs that have divested into metals, because those are starting to take off and stocks are getting absolutely hammered and cash are is kind of stagnant. So if you had a 401k, it probably got hammered this week already.
Yeah, man. I think we're in what they like to call a correction. But hopefully we're not in for a big market fall off, which could lead to another, recession. I mean, we haven't really ever come out of the recession, but I mean, we're talking about real tough economic times. And now, right now, man, if another bubble pops, like it did in 2008, 2009, we're not anywhere near in the shape to be able to carry a bubble burden like that. Now our economy is completely undermined. The labor participation rate is way too low. We got only like 100 million people in the workforce right now. The other 200 million people are out of work, retired, or on some kind of government subsidy. So there's not enough people working right now in America to handle another popped bubble. And that's what's so scary, is that this financial system, the economic system, the monetary system is so delicate, that if there was a major correction or a bubble popping, then it'll come time where people, even in the middle class, will soon have to be wondering where in the hell they're going to eat, or how they're going to eat, where they're going to get their water, because that's what happened back during the Great Depression, and it could happen again.
This could become the Great Correction, where those who had not bought into the fiat system, basically had divested into real assets, will come to know their wealth increase exponentially, as right before the Great Depression happened. I mean, I'm looking at the Dow Jones. It's lost roughly 500 points in 3 days. And if you're a student of economists, there's a guy named Harvey Dent who's theorized for years that when the Great Correction comes, it'll drop below 6,000. That would be a 10,000 point drop. I mean, this is when you're talking about a Great Depression in real terms, where the wealth of people gets cut into a third. You know what I mean? Like their 401k now is worth a third of what it used to be. That just changes our whole society. People literally cannot retire. What would that do if our generation can't even replace people retiring?
Yeah, man. And the other thing to think about also is that once people are retired and stuff, and when we have such a low participation rate in the labor force, think about all the people right now that are on Social Security, all the people that are on pensions. And we talked about it last week when we had Jason on about police brutality, and all the cops, even, they're all on pensions, all the retired cops. So when you have such a small amount of people working in your labor force, and keeping in mind that almost all the money for all these entitlements has already been raided and spent in all these wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and now Iraq again and Syria and all these covert operations and all these black book things that we've done. The money for most of those entitlements are already gone. So what they depend on is future income from people that are working. And when you have such a small amount of people in the workforce, man, that really changes things. It makes it a lot harder to support all these people, and a lot of these people rightfully worked a long time. They say they paid into Social Security their whole lives, and now we saw it back when they did that. What was it? The government shutdown. One of those things when Obama actually came on TV and he said, "Hey, I can't guarantee that Social Security checks are going to be coming in the mail." Well.
Where will the protests come from? The retired and the older people? I mean, the protests are not going to be there. The thing is, the youth now are disaffected, man. And that's what we have to kind of like get going. We have to get the people that are younger. I mean, if their parents start to lose their jobs, and then these guys that are living kind of at home with their parents, and a lot of them do have degrees, what happens then? What happens when everybody's thrown out? What happens when everybody moves in with grandma and grandpa? And it becomes to those extremes. Then will people that are young, then will people that can hack into things and change stuff get mad enough to do it?
Yeah, that's the big question, I guess. And that's why I was really excited about having Morgan Rockwell on the show on the last show on Monday, and talking about Bitcoin, BitCongress. And I wish he had more time to talk about his other Bitcoin projects, because mostly he was talking about BitCongress, which is like a Bitcoin-based voting system. But here's the thing, man, is that we shouldn't be sitting around waiting. Anybody listening tonight, you shouldn't be sitting around waiting for the stock market to crash and then say, oh, well, now I got to really figure things out. No, I think now is the time. So, I mean, let's think about it. You can go to the coin store, right, and you can buy a silver quarter that's what, pre-1964 or whatever, for like, I don't know, $6 or whatever. You can go buy a silver dollar for like $25. So, I mean, this would be a good idea. Once a week, go buy a little piece here and there and start putting that kind of thing, instead of having your whatever corporation you work for taking money out for your 401k. Well, no, that's not a good idea, because we saw what happened today. A bunch of people had 10% of their 401ks wiped out. And back in 2008, 2009, man, people's 401ks were completely shredded back then. And I made the mistake of having a 401k for a while there, and it was a huge mistake, because then when I realized I needed the money, I got nailed with a huge tax, man. When I left the corporation I was working for to start doing my own thing, and I needed the money because I was broke, I went to cash out my 401k, and the government took about 40% of it. So that's really not a good idea for young people either. So, I mean, just going into these little coins and stuff, I mean, it's a low cost. You can get a quarter for $6. You can get a dollar for $25 once a week.
Think about it. Gold and silver beat inflation historically by 2 to 3%, as long as the Fed's in existence. And it's going to stay in existence until people wake up. How long will that take? I don't know. So as long as the Fed's still there, you're going to make more off metals than almost anything except a boom stock that you just either get lucky on, or you have some kind of information, or you're just a great researcher. The average person would be well served to take extra money and go buy silver coins. Seriously. At least then you can control where your wealth is. You can protect it with yourself. And you're never going to get raided unless there's a house-to-house raid. And if it comes to that point, we got way bigger problems than our money.
Yeah, exactly. And then, the other thing to think about is, silver and stuff is great, but the main thing people need is food, water. So taking care of that stuff, man. So like, let's just say, for instance, there's a Great Depression scenario again, Do you want to be the guy that's over in the bread line waiting all day to get a loaf of bread for your family? Or do you want to be a guy that's got a garden going where you can already more or less, either through your own stuff or trading to people that also have food growing, take care of your family with the food that you can grow? I mean, it's a lot bigger than just money. It's about a way of life that's saying, you know what, I don't want to be dependent on the stock market. I don't want to be dependent on the US dollar, which is bathed in blood. Let's keep that in mind too. So it's not just a financial thing. It's not just a security thing. It's also a moral thing. The more we use dollars, the more we are sending our money into the government to kill people. And that's just a horrible way to look at it, but it's completely true. And so there's all the reasons in the world to slowly but surely, no matter how small at a time you start, whether you plant one little plant in your windowsill, you plant a little garden on your balcony, or you plant a garden in the ground and you buy a silver quarter once a week, that's better than just letting the system ride you to death and at the same time using the money that it generates off of your back to kill people all around the world. Now we have a caller in from 631 area code. You're on the Anti-Media Radio. What do you want to talk about? Hey, you there? Okay, they're not talking. We're going to have to close you out of the call if you don't talk here. Okay. Call back if you feel like talking. Anyway, I mean, we have to think about it in a much more bigger means, man, because whenever we're using the dollar, whenever we're participating in the system, that's more and more money that they're using to bomb Iraq and to create rebels in Syria and to overthrow governments in Egypt or whatever it is that they're doing with our money. And let's face it, the government doesn't represent us anymore. So 9 times out of 10, the stuff they do with our money normally goes against our wishes. We don't think that there should be corporate subsidies. We don't think we should be sending billions of dollars to Israel. Most people don't believe that. So if we can't vote and say, hey, we're going to vote for you and we don't want you to send money to Israel, well, if that's not working, well, then all we can do is take it into our own hands and vote by checking out of the system. Whether you do it for your own protection, whether you do it out of protest, whether you do it for moral reasons, either way. I mean, it's just got to be done. And the faster we do it, the more people join in, the bigger chunk we can take out. Hey, we have a caller on the line here from 561. How's it going? You're on the Anti-Media Radio. What do you want to talk about?
Hi. I wanted to talk about the recent thing going on with this Ebola thing. Are they kind of blowing it out of proportion, or did they just make it worse, or what's going on? Like, they're making a lot of conflicting information.
Yeah, that's a great question, man, and it's a question I've been asking myself like all week too, because I honestly don't know. I'd love to hear some opinions on it. I know DB has an opinion on it. I know I have an opinion. What do you think?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that it's kind of weird how the CDC. I'm pretty sure they're professional people and they're very smart, but it's kind of weird how they will say that it's okay to worry about it, it's minimum, and then there are a lot of things that are happening, lapse of protocols or stuff like that, and both parties really don't know an answer to it, and a lot of other people who are professionals, their opinions are getting shut out. So it seems like it like, I don't know if it's are we supposed to be worried about it, or are we not? So I mean.
Yeah, man, it's a good point, and I think we should kind of go through the whole spectrum here about the whole Ebola stuff, because this is a big topic. A lot of people are talking about it. Definitely. In fact, we have an article on the Anti-Media about Ebola, and that's basically the biggest article we've had all week, and there's probably 2,000 people reading that same article like right now. And I figured we go through the whole spectrum, and let's start at the official story. So the official story coming from the government about Ebola is everybody stay calm. It's not that big of a deal. Nobody's going to get sick. And that's basically the official line from the CDC.
Okay.
And then the next step below that, you have corporate media, right? And so in the corporate media, you have this story being played out by CNN basically 23 hours and a half of the day. and it's
Well,
over and over and over and over. Ebola this, Ebola that.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but to be fair, all of them are pretty much doing the same type of cycle. CNN, Fox, MSNBC. I mean, no matter what your affiliation is or your point of view, they do seem to, all of them, even the nightly news stations that come on around 6:30, and even local news are kind of saying the same thing, the same talking points, and then they bring out these experts, and I guess they're upset or they don't look totally upset, or like it seems like, yeah, you're right. I mean, they're doing it over and over, and then people just kind of like either get super worried or they just get numb and don't feel any empathy about people getting sick. Because it's just news all the time, like it's just on all the time, and no one really either worried or they just don't care.
Yeah, man, and it's kind of I think the main point coming from the media is like it's like an arrested hysteria, more or less. It's like, hey, this is really scary, but don't worry because it's not going to get you, type of thing. It's like, be scared, but don't be too scared. And that's the thing that really kind of puts me off, as to what is the agenda going on here, and I'm yet to figure it out. Like personally, now let's get down now below the mainstream stuff. You have the conversation in the independent media, in the blogosphere, in the social media, and I'm seeing basically three different narratives playing out below that. So you have the people that are basically saying that this is completely blown out of proportion. This is nothing but a big distraction, and it's just a bunch of mainstream media fear-mongering. But the real story is what's actually going on in Syria, what's going on in Iraq and Ukraine. Now, I put myself in that boat. That's where I see it from. But I don't know for sure. That's just my opinion. Now,
is it possible that the Ebola outbreak is more like a distraction for the fact that ISIS is gaining more ground? I mean, the monster that our government kind of created, it's gaining ground, and they don't want people to talk too much about it or ask them uncomfortable questions. That's probably it, and they'd rather have something else on people's minds.
Yeah, exactly, and also that they were kind of. See, the independent media was also kind of zooming in on and zeroing in on the fact that the whole goal of this whole ISIS intervention, us going over there, was actually not solely about ISIS, but actually mainly about toppling the government of Assad, which plays a much bigger role when it comes to geopolitics and closing Russia out of Europe. And
well, in my opinion, it's kind of weird that we are saying, oh, we're fighting ISIS, but yet we're also going to fight Assad. But you can't really have both ways. And the Free Syrian Army, I guess they're like generals that defected from Assad's military. And the problem I have is okay, if you overthrow Assad and you bring them in, what possibility are they going to have? Is a new government, or it could be the same, but just different people and with different faces. So, that's what I worry about, where they're supporting people, and then they find out that later on they had a similar agenda or similar goals, and they aren't drastically different from Assad.
Well, yeah, I think that's more or less what we did with Saddam Hussein. Back in the 70s and the early 80s. We helped Saddam Hussein come to power. We helped solidify his power. We supported him. And I kind of want to tie that in with ISIS a little bit later, but we could jump into that now about how, these guys have been doing this over and over again, regime change and stuff. And if you look at Saddam Hussein as an example, for a long time, he was our buddy. He was our strongman in the area. He was our Saudi Arabia in the area that we have now. And sooner or later, we realized, oh, damn, we picked the wrong guy. Now it's time to go overthrow him and start a war and overthrow Saddam Hussein because now he's a bad guy. Well, he's always been a bad guy. He was a very strong-armed dictator. He killed a bunch of political opponents. He killed a bunch of dissidents. He literally gassed the Kurds, which are the only guys that are actually really fighting ISIS right now.
I just think it's kind of it really is really an interesting thing where I'm just kind of weird why our government, if they wanted to have a peace, like real, like actual have a new partner or a new actual ally who they can probably change people's perception of our country, it would best be to support Kurds because, Kurds have been asking, probably the longest time that, hey, we forgive you, we want to support you, we want to be an ally with you, and yet our government's kind of like just giving them the silent treatment.
Yeah, that's because the Kurds are actually, if the Kurds ever had their own country, they'd actually be a really strong, independent democracy that wouldn't allow for corporations to exploit their resources. And that's why the Kurds, we've never really supported the Kurds. Even now they say they're doing a bunch of airstrikes in Kobani, which is that Kurdish town that's being attacked by ISIS. But we waited long enough. They were already they let ISIS get to the city before they ever started before they even started doing airstrikes. Now you got the Turks on the other side of the border, which are supposed to be our allies. There are reports that the Turks actually bombed the Kurds a few days ago or yesterday. Recently, the Turks actually fired artillery at the Kurds. So these guys, and they're part of NATO, and it's kind of like a pincher effect. They're kind of pinching the Kurds in there. Turkey at the north.
Israel's actually, they haven't declared it, but they are at war with Syria because Syria actually sunk 2 of their subs, dude. And this is well-known stuff from 6 months ago if you research it. These are expensive assets.
Wait, who's at war with Syria right now? Turkey or the?
So basically what had happened was Israel tried to get in and blow a munitions depot with some special forces. They did. They got in there. They blew it up. They got back on their sub. Syria sent a helicopter. Helicopter dropped a torpedo, and it blew up one of their, $2 billion subs. So
boy, that's not gonna go out.
That's war, dude. That's war.
I'm not about it.
So they've been at war, man. Israel and Syria are at war right now. If you want to look up that they lost 2 subs, you can find it.
Is it really bad? Or is it really bad if Assad did not lose power and he just stayed there? What would happen? Would it go back the same, or?
Well, he's a minority that was a brutal minority. Like the Alawite sect had always been the 10%ers that went around and just completely annihilated any opposition. So, yeah, the guy's a bad guy too, and he should be thrown out. But this is the problem. We throw him out, we supplant him, who comes in, and then Russia gets mad and fights us? Is that worth it?
No,
I don't
but
think so.
What I'm trying to say is, we know that Assad is bad, but the revolt, the revolution, is it really organic? Is it really enough people that of Syrian, real people that actually live there all their life, work, and they care for their family? Are they the ones really revolting? Not just a couple of people from the military that got sick and tired about it.
Right, provocateurs. I think you're probably in the right direction. I think it was probably not organic, and it was probably just caused a little fire, started a big one,
Well, it's a little bit of both, in my opinion. It's definitely initially organic and definitely real, but that's one of the problems. And I was talking to I met some people down at the Occupy San Diego 3-year anniversary. I went down and got some video, and I met some people from Spain, and we were actually talking about this very issue. And they were saying, they were like, yeah, man, all these countries around the world, they want democracy. Egypt, Syria, Ukraine. They all want, the people want democracy, but every time that they start a movement, the U.S. comes in and co-ops it. And these guys from Spain were telling this to me, and I was like, yeah, man, you're preaching to the choir. I know exactly what you're talking about. And that's what I was saying. The point I made to them, which is I think the same point that I think the world needs to hear.
Now just curious. Just curious. When you say that, the democracy is springing up, when they say that, but what type of democracy do people in that area, in the region there, do they really are fighting for? Because democracy has many different interpretations, different ideas about it. Or, because a lot of countries in the area are either ruled by a very strong family, a monarch, or a power-hungry, czar, that just is really into power and pretends like he's supporting the country, but in reality, it's I don't know. It just seems like every country down there is either a monarchy or is just either ruled by Islam, but like very strong, like theocracy, or it's just a circular nation that is ruled by a dictator that just it's just using violence and fear to control its citizens.
Yeah, or a military junta like they have in Egypt. Egypt is run now by the military. I think Egypt makes a perfect case, a perfect example of the problem that we keep facing, that we keep seeing. And if you remember back during the early days of the Egyptian uprising, the U.S. was heavily supportive. The State Department was heavily supportive. They came in and who was it? The Muslim Brotherhood swept to power, and they gave them something like I don't want to say 13 billion. Maybe it was 3 billion. Maybe it was 2 billion. It was a massive number that they came in and gave this $1 billion number to this Muslim Brotherhood regime. And then when the people rose up again because they didn't like how the Muslim Brotherhood was doing, what did the Muslim Brotherhood do? They went and they started slaughtering thousands of people in the streets. And this is a regime that we had just got done giving billions of dollars. And so this is the problem, man, is that everybody in the world, everyone in the world wants to be free, right? Everybody can say they want to be free, but the problem is that everybody has their own version of what it means to be free. So someone that is a hardline Islamist, his version of freedom may be Sharia law. But maybe a woman that's living in Egypt doesn't want to live under Sharia law. So everybody has their own version of freedom, and unfortunately, and that's the big problem I think with democracy, is that democracy is always the tyranny of the majority. In a real true democracy, it would be tyranny of the majority. We don't have that in the U.S., obviously, but a tyranny of the majority is just as bad in some cases as a dictatorship, because as long as 51% of the people say, yeah, we should throw all the Japanese people into internment camps, well, then all the Japanese people get thrown into internment camps, and then therefore the Japanese people don't have freedom. So that's the problem with democracy. And the problem is that so many people want freedom, they just don't know exactly how to accomplish it. And a lot of them, they think it's democracy. And even the people that are legitimately striving for democracy, the U.S. government co-opts their democratic movements and turns it into a more or less an oligarchy every single time.
But it's not what you're saying is all good points, but it's just that people forget that freedom isn't free. And if you really want freedom, you're going to have to get your hands dirty and really fight for it. And, I don't know, I haven't done that yet, fight for my rights and that sort of thing. But if if people report, something going on with their phone and they talk and they voice and everything, that has just as much power as if, pick up a gun and shooting somebody, that's doing tyranny. Because the worst thing they want for any type of enemy that wants corruption and wants to put fear and whatnot, if you go back and you put a video on them and you report on them what they're doing, and the worst thing they hate is people finding out what they're doing. It's always the same thing. Most countries don't want people to know what they're doing, and when they find out, they don't really have much to say, a comeback at all. It's like they always come with some talking points from a piece of paper that's like prepared, and they're like, yeah, but yet they got their hands, caught in the cookie jar,
Yeah, man, I definitely agree that the way to fight back isn't with the gun, because violence, government for the most part is basically made up of violence, and we can't really solve that problem by committing more violence. We got to take the higher road, take the moral road, just like Martin Luther King did, man. When those protesters back during the days of Martin Luther King sat there and let themselves get sprayed with hoses, brutalized, all that stuff, that's what really cemented their rise to influence. And that's what really cemented the civil rights movement, was the nonviolence. And it's the same thing that Gandhi did. And it's something that I think we need really to improve on modern days, not just here in the U.S., but all over the place. Hey, we have another caller in. From 239. Yeah. No, feel free to stay on the line. You can jump off if you want.
My name is Eric from Boynton Beach. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. It was definitely an awesome experience. I appreciate your time, sir.
Awesome, man. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks.
So we have another caller in from 239 area code. Are you on the line there?
Yeah, I'm on the line. I didn't realize I was talking. I thought I was listening on to a radio.
Yeah, you're on the radio live right now. We can barely hear you, though. If you can turn your mic up a little bit or speak into the phone and let us know what you want to talk about.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, all right. So
I'll talk about whatever. I mean, do you want to start somewhere as how people are just looking at the world today, how it's shaped, or do you want to talk about how everything could be changed in 3 days?
Well, let's jump back into this. Let's jump back into this topic with the Kurds and what's going on with the Kurds, and I really want to get into this stuff now. This news that was coming out today and last night about how ISIS supposedly has captured all these chemical weapons. And so if we think back, we remember during the whole George Bush incursion into Iraq, and the whole WMD thing fell apart, and everybody was like, oh, well, why in the hell did we go there? There's no chemical weapons and stuff. Well, there's some articles that came out today, and I don't know how to take them, but looking at them at face value, basically what I saw was there was these old chemical weapons in Iraq from the early 80s that we actually gave to Saddam Hussein. These are the same weapons that he used to gas the Kurds. These are the same weapons that he used against Iran when he went to go invade Iran with our backing. And now all of a sudden, the corporate media is trying to say that ISIS has gotten their hands on them. Now, the reason why we didn't hear about these weapons beforehand was because they didn't think it would be smart to say, hey, we found Saddam's chemical weapons. Oh, wait, we gave him these ones. So they didn't want to do that. So now all of a sudden it's now politically acceptable to talk about these chemical weapons. And now supposedly ISIS has their hands on them. And I think we gotta look back to the Kurds. And the Kurds, how they got gassed by us, and why are the Kurds such an enemy of the U.S.? Why have we never, ever helped out the Kurds? Why is it this year the only time we've ever really heard about the Kurds in the media? Why did we help bomb the Kurds? Why is Turkey bombing the Kurds? Why did Turkey kill 30 Kurds in the street last week? Well, I want to kind of tie this into the whole U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East, because if you look at what we do in the Middle East, if you look at our allies, who is our strongest ally in the Middle East outside of Israel? Well, that's easy. That'd be Saudi Arabia. What is Saudi Arabia? A hardline Sharia law practicing regime that beheads people in the streets, that treats women like animals. They treat non-Sunni Muslims like animals. And I think this is why we never, ever supported the Kurds, and why we never looked at the Kurds as an ally, even though they are moderate, even though they do respect human rights, even though they do respect women, even though they do have democratic aims. Why have we always treated them like shit? And why does Turkey treat them like shit? Well, it's easy. Because we're an oligarchy, Turkey's an oligarchy, Saudi Arabia is an oligarchy. That's why they're horrible to the Kurds, because the Kurds are actually moderate people that want democracy. And we prop up these horrible regimes all around them. In fact, we even support them in their bombing of these people, which is absolutely horrible. Yet all of a sudden, it's like a whole new thing in the media. It would be as if you never knew the Kurds existed before. So I want to kind of figure that out. I want to figure out the role that the Kurds play in this whole thing. And because I think the Kurds are the one group of people that we really that the U.S. should be working with. Should we have helped create ISIS by funding them through the CIA? No. Should we be trying to topple the Assad regime? No. Should we have installed the Saddam Hussein regime? No. Should we have toppled the Saddam regime? Hell no. So why are we propping up all these dictators around the Kurds and never ever supporting the Kurds, which are actually people that should, in theory, line up with Western, ideals?
Think we got to play all the sides, right?
I mean, I don't know, man. And it's a question that I've really been asking myself lately, and seeing what's happening to these guys over in Kobani, and seeing that they're getting pinchered in by ISIS and by the Turks. I mean, it's horrible. The Turks aren't letting them across the border. In fact, they shelled these guys the other day, and I mean, we're setting these poor people up for absolute massacre, man. And it's ugly. It's really ugly. And every country around there has been at odds with the Kurds. Saddam Hussein was at odds with the Kurds for a very long time. The Turks are at odds with the Kurds. The Syrians are at odds with the Kurds. At least they were. Now their big problem is ISIS. Now the only country that they live relatively peacefully in is actually Iran. And that kind of says something for itself, because we're fed this idea that Iran is the most horrible country, the worst country in the world. They're a threat to the whole world. They're gonna blow up Israel and all this stuff, which obviously isn't true. Because Iran would never blow up the Dome of the Rock, which is in Israel. They would never bomb. They would never nuke the place, because they would be nuking their own monument, and the whole Muslim world would turn against them. But the Kurds do live fairly peacefully in Iran. I'm sure they do have their own issues and stuff, but we don't hear about it very much. Not like we did in Iraq, where we were bombing these guys, and not like we're seeing in Syria, where they're getting genocided off. So I don't know, man. I mean, what is it with these guys? Do you want to talk about this stuff? Caller from 239?
I'm all right with talking about this. I mean, what I'm really interested in is how we can just talk about changing it. And, you're sitting here in the United States. I'm sitting here in the United States. Whoever else is on this call I'm sitting here. Whatever. These are what we've grown up through our childhood, through the generations. These are opinions that have been expressed by individuals in independent situations.
Sure, man. So let's talk about some solutions. I mean, I think we lost the caller, but it's a great point, though. Like, what can we do? Now, we talked at the beginning about checking out of the monetary system, and that's great, and that is one way, and I think it's one way that we can all take into our hands personally right now. But what else, can we do besides checking out of the monetary system to kind of provide solutions to fix all these problems? 239, you're back on the call here. You hear me?
I can hear.
Sure, man. So let's talk about some solutions. You got any ideas?
Well, I mean, you got the two-party system, that can be, I think, let's see, the libertarians, I believe, want to bring back the old way of doing things, cutting out everything else and going by scratch. You have the independents that have each independent mind, which I was talking about earlier before we got cut off, that bring a little X variable to the equation, scientifically speaking. And it's been said in the past, we can do the same things expecting a different result. But that's the definition of insanity. You take that into consideration, we're just going to be repeating history. And repeating history here is what's really happening all around the world, whether it's dictatorships, monetary, or meaning
like monetary hegemony. Yeah,
exactly. And you take all these things into considerations. Well, change, how can we change this? Well, for one, I mean, you got the little infinite eight going on here, where the independent doesn't have any power. They're that one small dot in the middle where either side is your Democrats or Republicans, and you get that one independent that wants to go over the edge and do something the correct way. What is the correct way? You were talking about earlier how everybody has different opinions, and just to tie it in all together, it can be just done by changing little things in our areas. Like I see this calls from New York. I heard Chicago had a movement. I mean, who's going to step up and have little Martin Luther King Jr. Inspiration and be vulnerable? Because that's how a leader is made, by being vulnerable and standing out and just going with what you believe in and taking that in consideration. I mean, one step at a time. things can be put into place. And I really think the world can be changed around in 3 days by just independents starting to speak out.
And starting with energy. I think that's what we always wrap around this at the end, man. If we have energy and we can all get off the grid, then what can they do?
Correct.
Yeah, man, and I definitely agree. And I think the biggest thing that could, increase the world, and as I said, everyone's got their own version of freedom, right? So everyone's got their own vision for the world, vision for their country, their life. What we can do is promote a vision of, and it sounds so simplistic, but everybody has their own vision. Okay, let's all accept that, So the people that are like, very, very Christian and don't believe in gay marriage, okay, don't get a gay marriage and, live your life that way. And if you don't, if you're into that thing, then do it. And so people need to stop trying. I think the biggest problem in the world, and if you look at this, if you look at the Middle East and take that as an example, and you look at the Sunni versus the Shia conflict, where the Sunnis are blowing up the Shia, and then the Shia are blowing up the Sunnis, and there's a suicide attack here and a suicide attack at this mosque, and this, that, and the other thing. Why can't they just say, okay, that's cool. You believe in the religion. I believe in the religion. You believe in a slightly different version of it. I believe in a slightly different version of it. Look back and think about when the Christians and the Catholics were at each other's throats and killing each other and all that stuff. If people were just to say, okay, that's cool. You can be Sunni all you want, man. As long as you don't make me be Sunni or make me live under your rules, that's cool. And I think that's
what they're doing.
Needs.
They're setting that up, Nick. They're going to do Sunni, Shia, Kurd, Turkish. They'll have the little Israeli section for the Jews, and then they're going to give Gaza their own little area, man, because they're now, being Sweden and the UK both basically are respecting the rights now of Palestine. So they're going to get a homeland one way or another. Israel's going to get cut up, whether they like it or not, because people just are tired of this shit, man. They're tired of it.
Hey, we also have another caller on the line from 818 from 239. Feel free to stay on the line and join this round table here, and we look forward to some more input from you. 818, did you want to talk about anything?
Yeah, I thought you guys were profiling me at first. What's up, Nick? Baby, how you doing, man? How you doing?
Pretty good. How you doing, Manny?
Well, I'm keeping up with my state, home state. You talk about people being fed up. My state down there in Guerrero, not my hometown, but my home state, down there in Aitonama, they're burning government buildings. They're trying to take over completely. I mean, they just burned down a brand new government building. I mean, people are just tired, and people say, well, Manny, you're not into the violence, but I do support them on this one. Sometimes it takes something like this to get the government's attention, because I don't think the government was taking them that serious and stuff like that. And then they're trying to tell the mothers, yeah, we found your sons. And the mother says, that's not my son. And the government says, yes, it is. Damn, damn well a mother knows who her son looks like. So the government's even trying to say these bodies are students and they're not and stuff like that, But one of the things you were saying about, democracy and stuff like that, the United States doesn't want any friends. They have no friends, actually. They're just, they want to just control every country. Like we've been saying, in the past week, Nick, baby, and when I talk in, is that we create all these people, and then when they get too powerful and they want to go maybe, instead of dancing rock and roll, they want to go dance Zumba or salsa. That's when we want to knock them down and stuff like that. And then we supply them with arms and stuff like that. Well, one of the things that were asking me, my government friends were asking me, they says, hey, what were you saying about the gas? I said, yeah, it's supposed to be unconstitutional around the world to be, somebody throw gas at you because you're doing peaceful protesting and stuff like that. But the way I look at it, if you're going to gas me, at least gas me with something that's not outdated. They're using stuff that's so outdated for God knows how many years and stuff like that, And so there's no doubt in my mind that right now the biggest threat to not having peace is the United States. They're the biggest bully in the world right now. They want to dictate everything, and just we can't work that way. So I think we're going to have to handle a lot of stuff at the grassroots levels because the government system's not working. So we have to basically just say we're taking it back somehow, and I'm not sure how.
Yeah. There was a poll or a survey done in 68 countries, 60,000 respondents to this poll, and they asked people around the world who is the biggest threat to world peace, and by an overwhelming margin, people around the world said, "Well, that's obviously the U.S." And then I think China came in second, and then Iran came in third. But I'm talking about by a big margin. And I think people around the world get it, But unfortunately, a lot of people inside of the U.S. were also subject to the state-run media, or,
honestly, yeah, exactly. Let me ask you, how many people watch, the day-to-day news that happen on the television that's all that they watch? They don't research into, what's happening in the other countries around the world.
Oh, there's a big majority of people. Now, if I have access to the anti-media's statistics and demographics and stuff, and I can tell you that our audience is pretty young and stuff, and they don't watch that much TV, but there are a lot of people out there that do watch all this crap on, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News. And, the overwhelming, if you look right now if we take a snapshot of like the corporate media right now, you'll see Fox News is fear-mongering Ebola, CNN is fear-mongering Ebola, and, MSNBC is kind of picking up Obama's coattails as he walks by. And it's kind of funny to see all this stuff and how it changes, because back during the Bush administration, MSNBC was like the big government watchdog, and they were pointing out all the flaws in Bush, and now Fox News is taking over that role now that it's a Democrat. I mean, it's such a show, it's such a fake show.
Yeah,
and,
I mean, you take a look at that too, and check this out. I saw this on YouTube. I can't remember the link for the life of me, but just type in the search in Indian gentleman from the U.S. who went over to India, or I can't remember which country it was. But he was a news reporter, and he just went over there doing an experiment. And the experiment was to see how real the news was printing out in their press. And so he created a story, and in shocking discovery, this reporter found out that one of this country's reporter took down every single information he said and printed it out. And it was all false information. And the next day, when the press printed this false information, I guess he was thought of as a hero because he saved the baby's life or something, some odd story like that from a fire. And the thing is, this happens all the time. And so what's real? What can we actually believe that's on TV news or anywhere that we don't research?
Yeah, that's a good question, man. And
I think William Cooper answered that. Actually, you just have to research it yourself, because otherwise, anybody can say anything. I mean, I'm looking at Wikipedia and Snopes and all these stupid so-called whatever meta. What were we on? What was Anti-Media on yesterday, Nick? Meta bunk or dump or whatever.
Metabunk. Yeah,
which
Metabunk.
Is you look it up and there's one meta bunk, and then there's like 50 people saying this is a bogus website full of trolls. Bullshit. And then that's all it is. So you can't trust anything unless you read it like 40 different ways. If 40 different people come to one kind of a consensus, it's somewhere in there, right? The truth.
You take one side, you take the other side, the truth's in the middle.
Yeah, exactly. And what I like, and this is what's really changing now, and this is what I think is going to bring us this new age of media, a new age of truth, and a new age of like what's really going on is what I like are live streams, vines, tweets, Facebook posts, people that are actually there. There's actually a really, really cool app, and it's not gaining that much traction yet. They've actually contacted me and asked me to help them kind of make this thing bigger and get a bunch of people using it. But there's also an app called Views, which is spelled VEWS.co. And it's basically a news reporting app where you literally have to be at the place in order to post the news because it's geolocated. So every time you post, let's say there's something happening right outside your house, you can post the story, post a description with a picture, and it geotags every time someone posts. So you actually have to be at the place in order to report the news. And then so the news that you're reporting is actually right there, eyewitness from the ground. And that's what the internet is, going to provide us sooner or later. It's already there with Livestream, Ustream, and stuff. We did a lot of it when it came to when we were covering the recent Ferguson protest last weekend. Ferguson October, we had like 4 live streams embedded in our website so that you could actually see it unfolding live on video from somebody's cell phone. And then, a bunch of people posting tweets and vines and stuff. And this is how we can get closer and closer to the real truth. I mean, anybody can take a story, digest it, spin it, put their own opinion on it, or even distort it outright. I see a bunch of supposedly alternative media websites that just completely distort the news. So I think the only way to really get down to it is by getting the eyewitness reports, posting the pictures that are from the people on the ground, the tweets, the feeds, and all that stuff. That's how we really get to the truth.
Well, you know how we can get to the truth in the United States too? I mean, the whole world sees it except the United States. The United States doesn't have their own culture. They don't have they have an identity problem. You know what I mean? Music-wise, hamburgers, they think their hamburgers belong here. I'm sorry, they don't. They think, it's just, they don't. Everything's imported from everywhere else. They're copying everybody else. Like when they do a reality show, they already copied it. They copied the idea from England and stuff like that. It's just like there's no creation in here no more like in the old days. People don't create; they just copy things anymore.
Well, our branded product.
We innovate technology-wise, and we do have Silicon Valley, and that bubble is the only thing that's kept our economy afloat, quite honestly. So we have plenty of innovation. The biggest problem is that we have this really, really top elite part of society that's dumbed down the population, man. You can look it up. We're no longer competitive on purpose.
Yeah, that's true, Debbie. You're right about that. Good speech, actually.
And I mean, our branded product, right? Our largest export was democracy. And we've kind of failed on that front, and that's the thing. That was our identity. Our identity was, hey, we're the freest country in the world. We're awesome. We got this awesome economy. Why? Because we're free. Well, that might have been true, at least for a lot of people. There was a point in time when the majority of people were actually free in this country, and they were actually represented. Now, of course, minorities, women, they didn't have the same rights. But at a certain point, there was a majority of people that had represented and were benefiting from this quote-unquote democracy. But unfortunately, those days are over, and now we have, devolved into this oligarchy. And I know oligarchy is a strong word, but it's true. I mean, if you look at our policy decisions, we are an oligarchy. The lawmakers pass laws based on corporate lobbying and special interests and all that. I mean, that's not a myth; that's a fact. And that was our identity for a while, and now we've kind of strayed away from that. We don't have that anymore. I think a lot of it is of our own doing because we got complacent, but a lot of it is we were coerced. Caller from 814, man, feel free. What do you want to talk about?
How do you propose on fixing it? Because I'm just curious on how you would propose to fix it. Like, what do you think we can do?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. Let's go in order here. 239. You wanna go first? Let's hear some ideas about fixing this stuff.
Well, fixing it. Well, we were talking about earlier how you have the two sides of democracy, Republican, doing the same thing over and over again, repeat through history, same thing as the definition of insanity, expecting a different result. Well, we're putting all these votes in. By the way, what I believe, where you put your money right now, since we're in a monetary world, capitalistic is my belief, in my opinion. Anyway, where you put your money is where your vote is. So we're talking about corporations and how, say, I wanted to buy a pack of pick at Guitar Center. Well, instead of going to Sam Ash, my vote's at Guitar Center, and that money there then goes up the line, and the guy at the top is who my vote goes towards. Well, fixing this, I think, there's many problems, but for this specific problem, I mean, we're talking about a corporate, holistic, for lack of better words, world. Where are we going to put our money now towards? Are we going to do it towards the mom and pop shops where we now can give money back into our economy? I feel this would for your economy, because now the people who are striving and are not known to feed their families now are being recognized, instead of keep going to this Walmart, keep going to this Publix, keep going to this Target, all these big numbers, and buying Coke and buying Pepsi. I mean, that's one way.
Yeah, man, good point. Voting with our money, man, is a good way, I guess, of moving this thing. And now we got to keep in mind, like what we mentioned at the beginning, even if we remain participating in the dollar system, then by default we're still supporting the status quo. So by supporting mom and pop, but also moving towards alternative transactions of whichever way, whether you can use Bitcoin, bartering, trading, labor swap, hard monies, asset trade, whatever. Manny, you got any input on this?
Yeah, I kind of like that trade and barter. That's a great idea, because you basically you let the money stay in each one's community. The way we're bombing countries and building them, I think maybe we should bomb ourselves and then rebuild and start over, including with the Congress and the Senate and everything else. And stuff like that. And so. And
I actually think a lot of people wouldn't disagree with you on that.
Not to put a damper on anything, guys, but I just wanted to end the show with something breaking, and maybe we can just end with the roundtable of it. Meredith Land from NBC5 Dallas breaks that tomorrow Dallas commissioner will declare state of emergency for Ebola.
Oh, wow. You
know
what's bad?
Like 1960, man.
You can have the Halloween uniform. Costume. I take that back. They're actually having an Ebola costume. God, what a disrespectful thing to do here in the United States for Halloween,
Yeah, I saw that. It's been pretty controversial, the whole Ebola costume thing. So, all right, let's. I know we talked about this at the beginning a little bit, about the whole Ebola thing, and there's so many different theories. There's people think that it's made up. People think it's weaponized on purpose. People think it's overblown. People think the official story is real. But in the end, even when this Ebola thing blows over, like I think it will, what do we do then? I mean, then the latest big thing is over. Then what? I think Manny
on ISIS and how they're screwing with us, I would say.
I think Manny was on a point there that he didn't get to finish. You there, Manny?
Yeah, well, it's just basically we really have to educate ourselves in that stuff. And I found out that a doctor actually said that we're not ready for stuff like that, even in Latin America, and they're trying to put facilities as close as possible to airports so that when something does happen from a flight that comes in, we can take them to the nearest airport. So I don't know, stuff like that.
Yeah, man, and it's crazy. The state of emergency for 3 people, to me, it's like overbearing, man. I don't know.
I'm going to be down your way on Wednesday. You want me to drop by your show?
Yeah, come by, and you can help us broadcast from the studio, man.
Okay.
814. Yeah, for sure. I'll send you the address. 814, did you have anything else you want to talk about?
No, that's it. You guys are pretty chill. I like your Facebook thing. I always follow you guys.
Thanks, man. So you called in and you wanted to talk about solutions. Do you have anything you want to throw out there for people to think about?
I feel like we should start and fix our transparency. Like, how with Edward Snowden, how we're just railroading, how we're just killing this guy, how we're just freaking scapegoating to him. Like, anything bad, we're just hitting on him. I kind of like what he did. I don't know if your opinion is the same. I feel like we should be knowing what our government's doing. I feel like there shouldn't be that too many black book things. I understand that there's some things that we shouldn't know about because, look, they were trying to work on a new sub for whatever meaning. We wouldn't want the Chinese or the Russians to get it. But
yeah, I agree with you, man.
That we
gotta be more transparent. Need more hackers.
Yo, here we go through the stereo.